Just wanted to go over how to set up these electric clippers. No one really has a good video on YouTube, so there's a lot of details that are very important, because if you don't set these up correctly, they won't cut at all. Most electric clippers are pretty similar to this. You'll have a tension knob up here. You'll have the screws which hold the comb, which is this piece, onto the head. And then you have the two little forks. If you look on the end, if you see that bevel at the tip, there, you can see that that is sharp and then that bevel is rounded. So these are, you want your cutter to be behind that bevel. This is a cutter. This particular brand is Oster. There's different machines that are different companies that make different brands of cutters. Most of them are interchangeable. They'll have this Bayin. This is TJ Law. They all are interchangeable except for this Oster only fits the Oster machine. So it's very important that the cutter, this part, is behind, is on the flat surface, is on the ground surface, and not past the bevel. If you go past, if you adjust this, the adjustment, the comb slides back and forward on those screws. So if the cutter goes past that bevel, it will not cut. It will just fold the hair over. You need the cutting surfaces to be hitting and not sticking past. Because you can imagine if there's if there's only one side to a scissor, it's impossible for it to cut. You're cutting the hair because the two sides are sliding this way and every hair that's in between is getting cut off. So it's very important that the sharpened surfaces are touching and that you're not past the bevel. The other important thing is that this cutter hits on this edge and hits on this edge, because otherwise any hair that, if it's not reaching to both edges, any hair that's left there will not get cut efficiently. So if you can see the difference between the bevel here and the sharp part, which you can easily tell which part is ground by the lines going straight up and down. You can see that it's been ground, whereas the other side is like a dull color. So you always want to make sure you don't put the comb on that way. You always want the cutting surfaces facing each other. I'll take my cutter, and there's two little holes there and there on the tips. And those fit right into those little pointy things right there. And these little bumps there will fit into these holes here. And you want to make sure that that's seated in there, that those little those little pointy things are in the holes. So I'll just kind of set it there, make sure it's even. I want to make sure my tension is loose, because if my tension is really tight, just to exaggerate it, then when I bolt this comb down, I won't get a good, if you look real closely here, between the head of the clipper and the comb, if it's not bolted tightly, or if this is pushing too far forward, I won't get a good connection because it's at an angle. So I'll tighten these down. Then I'll turn my clipper on. And because there's not a good tight connection between the head and the comb, because I have this space in there, when this starts going back and forth, my comb will just fly off. So it's really important that this isn't too tight down, that you loosen this tension knob so that you're able to get a good connection between the head and the comb. Then you're going to take your comb, you're going to slide it on. and just you don't want to push it all the way back to that edge. A lot of people will do that when they're starting. It's made so there's plenty of room to adjust it, but you want to make sure that the tips are maybe a 1/4 inch back or an 1/8 of an inch back from the end of the combs to start with. Then just kind of move it. It moves left and right. So just kind of get it in the center, and that's a good place to start. I'm going to tighten down one of the screws. Then I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to check how I've done. So here it is. I'm pretty far back from the bevel, so I'm going to hit on the ends. I could be further forward, and it's going to push through a little easier. The thing to remember with the comb is as this comb glides over the skin, it's smoothing the skin in front of it. Any wrinkle or anything that is small enough to fit in between those teeth will get cut off. So the more time that those wrinkles have to get smoothed out before they go in, before they get here, the less chance there'll be cuts. So if you're worried, if you're shearing a really wrinkly sheep, the more space you give between that cutter, the tip of that cutter, and the tip of the comb, the less chance you can cut them. It's going to be harder to push through the wool, but it's kind of a balance. Like, how hard is it versus what is the chance you're going to cut them? So a good happy medium is I like to leave like maybe, I don't know, like a 1/4 inch from the tip or something. So I'm going to push it to this side. It's hitting on this side. And then kind of just lay my thumb on top, and I'll turn it on. Just to, if I let go of that, the cutter will just fly off. So I just need to put a little pressure on. If you stick your finger down in there, it's going to get cut. But if you just lay it on top, you'll hopefully be safe. Look at it and see, is it hitting? That other side. Now you can see if you push it, it hits, but that can be deceptive because a lot of time these internal components can be worn, and so I can push it that far that it will hit, but when it's running, if you look there at the left edge, it's not quite hitting that side because it's able to push that far, but the mechanisms inside that push it have worn, so they're not pushing it all the way over. So you need to actually watch it as it's running, and you'll see it's not quite hitting on that edge. So you need to slide the whole comb to the right. So you'll flip it over, and so now it's going to be to your left, and you'll just kind of inch that comb to the left a little bit. Flip it over. Check, is it hitting on that side? Okay, it's hitting on that side. So now you can see it's hitting on both sides. It's hitting on this side. It's hitting on this side. It's behind the bevel, and you're good. So what you're gonna do is flip it over, tighten down this comb, get both of the screws tight. Then you're gonna want to create a starting tension so that it doesn't fly off. I like to just let the weight of the clipper hang, and I'll just turn it. I'll turn it until the clipper starts moving. Turn it. Okay, now the clipper's starting to move. So that's tight. That's tight enough that it's not going to fly off when I turn it on. And you just make sure that those pins are in those holes. And then turn it till the clipper starts moving, that's a good place to start. Once you start shearing, if it's dragging, you're going to want to just give it a little bit of tension. If it's still dragging, just a little bit more. You'll kind of get a feel for how tight it should be, but you want it to be as loose as possible while still cutting like butter. It should just cut really easily. As long as you're against the skin of the animal, it should cut easily. So, but a good starting tension is just till the clipper starts moving. Then start cutting and just tighten a little bit until it's cutting. Then don't tighten it anymore. Once you've got your clipper set up, every clipper has a little different. Some clippers have oil holes on the side. It's pretty self-explanatory. These heinigers will have one oil hole right here. Give a little squirt of oil there. Put a little bit on the blade. Some people put like one in each of these holes, and you're good to go. That's how you set up a clipper. That's how you set up an electric clipper. It's pretty tedious to start with, so really make sure you're hitting on both sides. You're behind the bevel.